Hey, y'all. Welcome back. I'm really glad that you're here today. I have such an amazing topic to discuss today. It's titled Built, Not Born: The Habits That Shape Young Men into Leaders. This is such an important topic because young men, well, humans, are going through so much these days with everything being digital and right in your face. How should a young people work through this? And how can we as grown-ass adults help them through it? Well, before we get into today's conversation, I want to set this tone very, very clear. This conversation is going to be deep. It's going to be intense. It is not about fixing people. We are here to help and support, to bring awareness and create a space where growth can actually happen. Because the truth is, most people don't need to be fixed. They need structure, they need guidance, and definitely need consistency. And that's what we're here for week to week. Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them before they can believe in themselves. And I'm going to tell you right now, I believe in you. And I know that you're here because you want to learn, you want to shift, you want to grow. So be ready to dive into this. Every single one of my episodes are heartfelt, whether it's me by myself or it's me with a guest. It is intentional information put together. I'm so excited. Throughout the next several episodes that I'm going to have, it's all about health and wellness, how we take care of ourselves, how we show up as leaders, as humans, and today. But today, we're shifting that conversation just a little bit because leadership doesn't start when you get a title. It starts much earlier than that, in habits, in discipline, and how someone learns to show up for themselves when no one is watching. And if those habits aren't early, it becomes much harder later. I wanted to bring someone into this conversation who works directly in this space. DJ is here. He has built a program called Be That Guy that focuses on young men specifically, although we'll talk about it later, how he does support women also and females in this area. But he works directly, and his team works directly with males 18 to 26, which is such a unique age. So I'm going to ask about that later also. He helps enable them to develop beliefs in themselves, building mental fitness, right? Being that stronger person, creating structure through simple, consistent habits. Habits are so huge in the psychological arena. And he does this, or they do this, in such a simple, easy way and not complicated, but powerful when done consistently, hence the habits, right? One thing I can say that I personally appreciate that he's doing is he doesn't leave anything at surface level. It's not surface level motivation. It's deep. It's building something foundational. So DJ, I just really want to say thank you so much for being here today with me. I was so excited about this call. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell them better what you're doing, how you're helping folks, and tell us about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for the introduction. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet you and dive into this topic. Yeah, so right now we're working mainly with guys 18 to 26. And the reason that we're working with that age range is because I was one of those guys in that age range who struggled with confidence and habits and accountability. And basically, what had happened was to kind of like take a 30,000 foot view and kind of, speed it up real quick. Graduated from college and I had this great job, really cool internship, and I ended up getting fired from that internship. And it was in like a weird way. And it was kind of like my first big professional big boy job. And when it happened, it was kind of like all this evidence that I wasn't smart and I wasn't strong and good enough to handle this job. That's the way that I saw it. That was kind of the story that I told myself. And so I lost a lot of direction and I lost a lot of, I think, belief in myself. And I feel like I had lost the tough, strong leadership DJ that I had built over the previous 21 years. And I felt like it all kind of came crashing to a halt. And so around that time, I was really struggling with my direction and all those things. And I ended up finding a mentor by the name of Scott Gibbs. And Scott Gibbs is one of my old basketball coaches. And I saw him at the weight room one day and he asked me how I was doing. And I just was like, I'm kind of a mess right now. I'm like, I could really use some help. And I think as guys, we don't talk about that stuff. Hey, I could use some help or some support. Yet I felt comfortable with Scott because he wasn't my parent, right? So he was kind of separated from the family piece, and I knew who he was. I knew the fabric that he was built from. And so we had an incredible conversation. That conversation might have saved my life, might have completely changed the trajectory of my life. I can genuinely say that. And so for the next 3 years, we started meeting about 2 to 3 times a week. And he started kind of coaching me through some of these accountability pieces, these confidence, changing the story on events and following through on things that we know that we need to do. And he almost kind of became like my first accountability partner, you could
I love
say.
that.
And so at the end of those 3 years, I was like, hey, why don't we build a program that helps other people? And initially it was just people. It wasn't young men, specifically in that age range. I said, what if we just helped people in general with building better mental fitness habits, right? And kind of that confidence. And so we started initially building this 8-week mental fitness program that we initially positioned as like corporate mental fitness training. And we
Okay.
still have that division of our business. Yet as I started doing more of that, I had moms reach out to me and say, hey, can you start to do this with my son? Right. My son is in that age range of 18 to 26. He's lacking just a little bit of direction and guidance. And I remember them saying, it looks like you kind of got your whole life together. And I was like, well, I'm 24, 25 years old. Like, I'm still trying to figure this out. Yet I would love to talk to your son honestly about some of the things that he might be going through. And
Mm.
so I started doing this just on a one-on-one basis throughout my mid 20s. And then as I just got more hours in the seat and just kind of grew the practice, I said, hey, why don't we build this into a full-blown program where we start groups each month? We have small kind of cohorts and we track different habits. We keep each other accountable to making progress both personally and professionally. And that's essentially how it all kind of came to.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. In the end of the podcast, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about how people can find you,
Yeah.
how they can reach out to you and things like that, because I know that our listeners is going to resonate with a lot of people,
Mhm.
this conversation that we're about to have. I really appreciate actually what you just said in many ways, because this is such an important conversation. But more than anything, honestly, I have to say, I appreciate that you recognized that you needed something, you needed someone. And I know you said in another conversation we've had that you're close to your parents. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad that you brought that up, because that dynamic is very interesting. And to know that you're close to your parents, but understanding that you needed something outside of that and admitting that you needed help, because this is going to allow our listeners to understand that asking for help is not a weakness, right? I have a whole nother podcast about that, that males and females, actually strong people, A-type personalities, tend to be afraid to ask for help because it is seen as a weakness,
Yeah.
because you're not capable of doing something on your own. So I really appreciate right up in the front, you said, hey, I admit that I needed help, right? I stepped out into that area, so that way our listeners can know right off the bat that you understand where they're at. You understand that in this position at your age, yes, you're a little bit older than that age group now,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering why. I mean, this isn't even one of the questions, but since you said it, I'm wondering why you stop at the age of 26. Is that like a hard stop? I mean, what if you came
So,
across somebody closer to your age, or do you feel
yeah.
like, why is that 26 the hard stop?
So it isn't a hard stop.
Okay.
And so I will say that, and it's funny because I actually spoke with a mom yesterday who had a son who was outside of that age range, older than 26.
Okay.
And we've had guys who were in their mid 30s do this program. And so I initially put the 18 to 26 because that was kind of like, if you think of a normal distribution, it's like that was the meat, the majority of the guys that we were working with. That was the age range. Yet, as we kind of talked about this like a little bit before we went on air, right? I have guys who are in their early 30s who I'm just buddies with here in Tampa who reach out to me and they're like, hey, what is this stuff that you're doing here? Right? Like, I think as men, we have a very big instinct to like tribalness,
Mm.
right? I think there's something powerful about guys being in teams and wanting to be a part of something with other guys. Like, I don't know what that is. I actually was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago about it was the difference between men and women with group work. And there was this really cool experiment where there were two women working on something collectively, and then they added in a third woman, and the two women kind of were mean to the third woman, like they didn't want her to be a part of the
They
group.
didn't want that added dynamic.
Right. They didn't want the added dynamic. And then the guys were like, oh, yeah, come on in. Let me show you what we're doing. So I don't know, that's probably outside of my understanding right now, right? The biological makeup of, hey, why are guys more in tune to that group element? Yet the 26 is not necessarily a cap. I mean, it's open to guys who do want to figure some things out. I mean, the majority of the curriculum that we've built is more tailored towards, so basically the way that we do it is we have the three core habits of reading, exercise, and sleep. And then the growth habit is tailored to the guy of where he's at. So that growth habit could be anything. I mean, we had a young man literally last night. This was so cool. He recommended to the group, he said, "Hey, for this week's growth habit," he said, "I would love if we did a group growth habit where you have to send an appreciation message to your mom." Like we all have to do that this week. And then one of the guys said, "I want to one up that." He said, "Not only do we want to do the mom," he said, "if any of you guys have a girlfriend, you have to send it to your girlfriend too." And one of the guys was like, "I have a girl who I have a crush on. Can I send it to her?" And we were like 100% send it to her. So it's like we get really creative with the growth habits. And so, a 21-year-old might be job applications, yet a 31-year-old might be a better workout routine, or it might be better nutrition stuff, or it might be just getting out into the arena and doing meetups in his local city so that he can meet new friends, or possibly, a girlfriend slash wife type of thing. So the growth commitments change based upon where the guy is at. So there isn't really necessarily a specific age
Okay.
ceiling, you could say.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that because, in the end, like I said, I'm going to have you talk about how people can get a hold of you. And I
Yeah.
didn't want that 29-year-old to be like, fuck, I wish he could help me. I wish I could reach out to this cat.
This
Yeah.
29-year-old is more than
Yeah.
welcome. All right. I'm
Yeah.
30. I'm 30 and I do every group, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Good.
in every group and I
Awesome.
absolutely love it.
Yeah, awesome. I love that because the whole thing is that a lot of people look at young men today and they see potential, right?
Oh yeah.
But they also see inconsistencies. A lot of times young men, humans, but I hate to
Mhm.
say this, more so in young men, they lack
Mhm.
direction sometimes and
Mhm.
also lack follow through. And I feel like a lot of this, and I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but it's a lot of times just because they don't have somebody guiding them all the time.
Mhm.
They don't have somebody to look up to or look out to because they look at their fathers, especially at 18, and their father is annoying. So they're gonna, I mean, I had this problem with my daughter. I gave her advice when she was a teenager. She went and did whatever she wanted to go to college, and then she circled back and wound up doing everything I recommended when she was in high school. So,
Yep. Mhm.
here you are. So I get that, and I love that is happening right now, and these people are reaching out to you, even moms reaching out
Yeah.
because they just don't understand why it's happening a lot, right?
Mhm.
Even you said you searched out, you went to this person that you had trust and faith in,
Mhm.
right? And that was
Yeah.
the reason you went to them. Thankfully, it turned out really well with him. All right, because now here you are.
Yeah.
But I love asking questions. If people listen to my podcast, I ask questions. I did a whole podcast on thought-provoking questions because
Mm.
I hate going to a group and saying to people, does anybody have any questions? And they don't say anything. And then an hour later, they're messaging me, asking me questions like, why? So I always have thought provoking questions. So, from your perspective, I was really curious about this. When we spoke last time, I meant to actually ask you about
Mhm.
this is what is the biggest gap that you're seeing with young men right now? In that age group or even outside of it, what is the biggest gap you're seeing in them maybe being productive? Or do you feel that maybe they see that they're failing instead of being successful? What is the gap that you're seeing the most?
I think the biggest gap right now is an effort gap.
Mm,
And I say that because I think and there's probably a lot of data. I've just heard this a lot. Like one of the number one things that young people, I think it's more just young people want to be is like content creators
mm,
and YouTubers.
mm,
And I think they look at that as a low effort thing that produces status, power, money, and freedom.
mhm,
And so I think the biggest gap right now is make effort cool again. Make going to the gym a standard way of living as, and I'll just say young as young men because we work with young men, right? And I think that applies to everybody. Make having a bedtime and a wake time a standard way of living, and that's going to require effort. Make having a limit on your phone usage or your video game usage or even your screen usage in general, make that a standard, and that requires effort. And so I think the world that we've kind of created, and I say this because this isn't parents' fault. I think to a degree there might be some things that parents can change, and just I think awareness is obviously the first step to changing. Yet if you want to, I know I hear this all the time, like little kids growing up and they're going nuts, and the parents just give them an iPad just to shut them up, right?
yeah.
So now this kid is super involved in screens, and then this probably goes on throughout his adolescence into middle school, high school type of thing. And so I think the world that we've kind of created is, hey, how can I get the greatest reward with the least amount of effort? Now, technology does that very simple, right? That's the whole reason of technology. It makes things more convenient. And so if you think about the simplicity of doing certain things today, like if I always use the example, right? I could sit on my couch and order Chipotle to my door. And that took zero effort, really, right? I could order an Uber and all I got to do is just get into the car and it takes me wherever I want, right? That's very little effort. Unfortunately, pornography is another one, right? It's very low effort and you get the highest dopamine hits that you can possibly have, right? And so same thing with video games, same thing with your phones, right? Your social media is designed as these crazy dopamine hits with very little effort. And so then when life happens, when everyday life happens of getting a job or paying taxes, making money, right? Being in shape, going to college, time management, right? Talk a ton about time management, discipline, all of these things that really require real effort. If a young man hasn't consistently practiced that, that's where I think he gets overwhelmed. That's where stress starts to happen. That's where anxiety, depression, and then they resort to the things that were comfortable and they stay in that kind of vicious cycle. So I like to say, make giving effort cool again.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That makes
Yeah.
absolute sense because I've seen similar patterns in males and females that
Mhm.
are around us, and actually, quite honestly, at all ages, right?
Yeah.
Because that quick fix with your phone or your iPad or whatever it is the easiest way to, distract yourself from anything else that you have going on in life, right?
Mhm.
I see that all the time with people, and it actually frustrates me because I'm just like, go out for a walk. You want to calm
Exactly.
your mind
Right.
down, go out for a walk. Don't do something that's going to make your brain even busier, right?
Yeah.
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 It,
It is frustrating. It is frustrating, I think, to people who kind of like, who are very aware of seeing it.
yeah.
Like I love the saying, like, bring back grandparents' work ethic.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like
Absolutely.
bring that,
Goodness.
think about how tough your grandparents were, right?
Yeah.
From like a resilience and a grit.
Oh,
Like they didn't
absolutely.
have any of that stuff. And that's probably why they live in a life like my grandma, right? I have my two grandmas who are in, I think they're mid 70s. They're like, they're walking to the grocery store.
Yeah.
They're getting their groceries and they're walking home and
Ex-
they love it. And
yeah.
and right. And my groceries are going to be delivered in 2.5 hours. And I just ordered them online, right? So
Yeah.
it's, I think it's important. You can utilize the technologies, I guess, yet let's also find spots in your life to
Yeah.
give effort towards something meaningful, right?
Absolutely.
So find the balance of both of them.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I said that because that's a big thing. I mean, I also use Instacart. I get very excited when I go on the app and it tells me I've saved 1,000 hours.
So do
Thank
I.
you.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I get very excited about that. But on the same token, I am very intentional about stepping away from the computer because I'm
Mhm.
working on my computer all day between coaching and everything else or classes that sometimes my eyes get blurry from
Oh
looking at the
yeah.
screen so long. And so I'll intentionally go for a walk and get outside and distract my mind and
Mhm.
things like that. But it's not that these people can't do the work, it's that they don't have the structure to sustain it, I feel like, right?
Mhm.
So this group that you guys have started is incredible to me. But the one thing I'd like to talk about is also the habits that you mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
When working with young men, you said that the three habits are reading, exercise, and sleep.
Mhm.
But why those three? And how do they actually impact how these men show up in their lives? Like, why those three, and how do you feel that they're actually impacting?
So those were actually the first three habits I started tracking
Hmm.
when I was in my early 20s. So basically, what ended up happening was when I was working with Scott in those like initial kind of 3 years from kind of like 2017 to 2020, I went to a seminar with Tony Robbins. Actually, it was like an
Hmm.
online seminar. And at the end of the seminar, Tony Robbins said, every person should read 15 minutes a day.
Hmm.
And that day, I bought a calendar. And during that time, I was actually trying to get into reading. I had a friend of mine say, readers are leaders and you need to start reading. And I really respected this guy.
Hmm.
So I was like, all right, let's try to start reading. And so I was, you could say, very average with reading and the consistency of it. And so I bought this calendar and my goal was, I said, I want to read for 30 minutes every single day for 365 days in a row. I said, and so I started tracking the days just simply on a calendar, just like literally on my wall. And as I did that, I said, well, I would love to start tracking exercise too, like workout minimum of 30 minutes for 5 times a week. So I wrote like exercise on it. And then at the time, I was trying to hit 250 grams of protein a day. So I
Hmm.
was like, I'll do 250 grams. So I ended up doing that. And then I did a 9 p.m. bedtime and a 5 a.m. wake time. And I started basically tracking these three or four habits like every day. And what I realized was it became this undeniable bank of evidence that I was following through on my commitments. And it became this thing that nobody could ever take away from me. And so I think you also mentioned, you asked earlier, what's the gap? I think there's also a huge gap in like self-belief within these
Mm,
young men
yeah.
because of the convenience that's been created. I think self-belief is built by doing hard things. And I call it controlled friction, right? Just a little bit of friction goes a long way. And so when I saw all of these check marks that I was following through on, it changed, I think, my psychology of what I thought about myself,
Mm,
right? It was like,
interesting.
right, it was like nobody's doing this for me, right? Like
Right.
I'm doing this amongst all the distractions of life. And so once I started doing that, I then bought like another calendar and I was like, all right, now I'm going to really get into this. And then when we started working with guys, one of our mentors, he actually ended up building like you could say the prototype calendar that what we've turned into today
Mm,
with this for anybody who's watching. We've gone through about 6 different renditions of this, but he was like, what if we built a calendar for all the guys? I'm like, brilliant idea. So we started building these calendars and using them very specifically, one, not only for the structure in the organization, but two, the actual evidence building. So the reading, the exercise, and the sleep was just the first couple of things that I started to track. The reason that I didn't do nutrition was because nutrition, I think there's a spider web, I think, when it comes to nutrition,
yeah.
but especially a guy who might be 18 years old, might be a high schooler. A lot of his nutrition actually is dependent upon the parents and the food that's in the
Yeah.
house, right? So I had to be a little careful with that. And sometimes I'll even say, depending upon the guy, I might say, if he's living on his own, I might say, hey, what if we set a protein a goal, right, each week, like a protein commitment, right? And he'd be like, yeah, perfect, right? That's a scenario where we could set a nutrition commitment. So that's why I held off on the nutrition based upon kind of where the guys are at. But that's essentially how we got those first 3 habits. And it's cool because the one of the things that we do is at the end of each month we do a reflection with the guys. And so we tally up their scores. So we do what's called a FTR, a follow through rate.
Mm,
And so we track, so basically I'll put this up, but like we track all of the habits that the guys do throughout the month. And then in this green box in the bottom, we basically add up all of their habits, and then we say how many of those did you actually follow through on. So for example, let's say the guy wanted to read 20 times in a month. He hits 15 of them. He had a 75% follow through rate on his reading habit.
mm,
So it's very like black and white. And so
okay.
this is great data because now you can share this with parents and be like, hey, your son is doing great in his reading, but he's slacking in the sleep or he's slacking with
Yeah.
the job applications, right? Whatever it is. And so we add all of that up. And then we also ask guys 3 questions about what they kind of learned that month with tracking their habits. What did they feel? Do they feel any changes in confidence? And one of the questions we ask is what's been the biggest impact so far
Mm,
of actually, tracking your habits? Every single guy has answered that question the exact same way. No guy has ever answered this question differently, and it blew my mind. And after the 20th guy who answered the same way, I said, "Oh my God, I cannot believe that this is the thing." The biggest impact that this program has had on them is their ability to start and finish a book.
mm,
And I asked them, I said, "Why is that such a big impact?" They said, "Because I've wanted to do that before." And I think deep down they know that like reading is like a very noble and I think wisdom thing to do. Yet because of the phones,
right.
it's like the
Yeah.
opposite of the phone. Like it's such a low dopamine thing compared to a phone.
Yeah.
And so I think they say, I've always wanted to do it, but I've never done it because it's always just been me and I'll read
Yeah.
3 or 4 pages and then I just forget about it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like evidence that they can't start and finish something then. And
Yeah.
so now when you have a group of guys who are keeping you accountable each week to it, they start and they finish it. I think it shows them that they
Mm,
can start something, they can consistently do the thing over and over and over again and follow through on it and essentially complete it. And so that's been one of the really big that surprised me when they've all answered it that way. So that's essentially why we do the reading because I think it shows them that they can start and finish something. The exercise, my goal with that is to kind of get them to put the phones down, right? Put the video games down, get
yeah.
away from the screens, get out, get the heart rate up. I think it builds it, right? It's back to that effort thing, right?
Hmm.
I want you guys to get in the habit of putting effort towards something and intentionally choosing discomfort, right? Exercise is intentionally just choosing discomfort. And so I think that teaches you the value of this is going to be hard and I'm still going to do it. And
Yeah.
there's some great videos out there online that I'll share with the guys about guys who like want to start businesses and they're like, we could fail. It's yeah, we're probably gonna. So I'm still gonna do it. right? Like
Yeah.
I love like that's a really great mentality.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially why we do the exercise. And the sleep one is just for the guys' energy and kind of like a bookends to their days. Cause a lot of the
Mm.
times they'll stay up super late on screens, playing video games,
Yeah.
right? And so we give them basically the first week, what we do is we have them just observe their sleep times. What times you typically go into bed and waking up. Then we set essentially a bedtime and wake time. And I'll tell you this, Tracy, that's the hardest one. It's the one that the guys miss the most because things happen, and especially it's interesting. The high school guys actually struggle the most with it too because they're so overly scheduled, and
Yeah.
so they'll wake up, go to school for the day, come home, they'll have some extracurricular stuff, whether it's clubs or sports, and then they'll have 3 or 4 hours of homework at 8:30 at night.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like
Exactly.
how are you supposed to hit a 10 p.m. bedtime at that point, right?
Yeah.
So that one's always pretty tough for them. So we try to be manageably difficult with all of the habits. So I'll say, hey, there's no point in making a 10 p.m. bedtime if we can't hit it. So let's be more realistic with this. So that's where the communication with the guys and being honest and integral with what we're kind of doing comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. The words seem so simple, reading exercise and
Yeah.
sleep. But honestly, simple doesn't mean easy, is basically what you're saying. It
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely doesn't mean people are even able to do them right off the bat, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
probably
some guys
should.
miss it. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
it's funny like sometimes like our first week I have like our whole curriculum over here. The first week is they read 2 minutes for 3 times. So like I just have them I'm like I just want you guys to get in the habit of setting a commitment and following
yeah,
through on it. And I've had guys miss that. And they're like, I can't believe I freaking missed that. I'm like, can you guys like just picture this, right?
yeah,
That's a total of 6 minutes in a 7 day time frame, and you didn't hit it,
right.
right? So it's very simple, yet
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily make it easy to
doesn't
do.
easy.
So
Yeah,
that's where I think they get, oh my God, like I actually need to plan this out, right?
yeah,
It's like that's where the effort comes into play. And that's where this becomes a little bit more serious. So it teaches them things without me actually saying, I'm going to teach you something here. Like the habit in and of itself just, I think, teaches them how to be more disciplined to their
yeah.
time.
And discipline is added right in that. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you in a little bit was, it falls right into that. So perfect for you on that.
Hmm.
I was going to actually ask you, do these young men struggle more with discipline or with belief? Having the belief be the simplicity of capability being in the first place. So do you think it's discipline or do you think it's belief in themselves? Because even though those are the same, they're different, right?
Yeah. I think discipline is more surface level, and I
Mm,
think I think belief is a little bit deeper.
yeah.
So we actually just released a podcast yesterday. I interviewed one of my good buddies. His name was Austin, really, really great dude. And I asked him, I said, what percentage of guys do you think believe in themselves?
Mm,
And we came up with the answer about 20 to 25% of guys. So about 1 out of every 4.
yeah.
And that's a deeper thing to talk about. And I think it takes a little bit of digging to actually be like, do I believe in myself?
Yeah.
The discipline, I define discipline as doing the harder thing when the easier thing is readily available. So it's kind of like it's the decisions that you essentially make amongst all of the distractions of life. And so a lot of the times I will tell guys there isn't, and I'll tell this to parents too, I'm like, there isn't a magic formula that we're going to walk your sons through. Did you do the thing or not?
Right.
Right. Like and this is one of the things that I'm getting better with because I'm actually having the guys share their tracking before the session so I can update it all. So we just have more time in the session to kind of set good growth commitments and have some of our other discussions. But it's not like I tried to do this. It's hey, it's a yes or a no, right? Discipline is did you wake up at 5 a.m. or did you not? Did you eat the chicken or did you eat the pizza? Right? Did
Right.
you send the text or do the call or not? So I think discipline is a very black and white approach, and which I love
Yeah.
because it makes it very simple.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think so. Which one do they struggle more with? I think I don't really know. I think the discipline is easier to see. The self belief is deeper. It's underneath the discipline. So I would, if I had to answer the question and pick one, I would say self belief. And the reason that I say that is because typically whenever a guy comes into our group, I will always have an introduction call with him first to make sure that he's the right type of guy for this. And a lot of the guys, we talk about confidence like right off the bat and self-image right off the
Yeah.
bat. And I don't, and I'm a firm believer that you will never outperform your self-image. And so I think a lot of these guys are performing low right now and they know that they can do better. And so that kind of shows me, all right, maybe they just don't think that highly of themselves, right?
Yeah, I asked
Yeah.
the question more than anything because, in my mind, understanding your program, it's so important because if someone doesn't believe in themselves, they're not going to stay consistent no matter how good the plan is. But I feel like they're coming to you surface level,
Yeah.
but you're doing things to build them up and increasing their belief in themselves by showing them on their own that they can read more than 3 minutes a day, you know, and like these things that you're helping them prove to themselves is
Hmm.
building that self-belief. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm just like long-term satisfaction.
Satisfaction.
Thank you so much. Words are hard. But the long-term piece to that
Yeah.
is what's going to have that person come out of your program and be able to walk into the world and do better as an individual.
Yeah, a lot of the guys, what I've noticed is so the way that we run it is we have a week zero kickoff, and then we have 12 weeks of the habit tracking. And then we also started to incorporate healthy masculinity discussions in weeks 5 through 12. And so we can talk about that as well. Yet after I call it like their phase one of the program, what guys have started to do is they just have rolled over into the next group because they've been making so much progress and they enjoy being a part of the weekly accountability, and it becomes kind of like this standard of living. And that's really what helped me a ton in my 20s was it gives you the structure of like, okay, here's how my days go. And just knowing that, I think, helps with just your peace of mind. And I think when it comes to self-belief, because now it's, hey, like I have things that I'm doing that makes me feel of use and makes me feel like a little bit more valuable. And so the guys will just roll over into the next group and they'll continue with wherever they're at with their core habits. And then we just shift the growth commitments each week. So yeah, so it is a long-term game here. You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, start
Starts
somewhere.
right.
Yeah.
Just start tracking some. And a lot of people will say, "What's one thing somebody can do today to start moving in this direction?" I'll be like, start tracking just one little thing, whether it's
Yeah.
waking up on time or going to bed on time or 15 minutes of reading or putting limits on your phone usage. Just start tracking one thing and make it visual so you can see your progress. That's the best little piece of advice I ever personally got, and it's been super helpful.
I feel like even though you do use templates to track
Yeah.
progress, I almost feel like even though it seems like it could be cookie cutter because you have the templates, I feel like almost you gauge what the person needs off of who they are and what they're coming to you with. Is that accurate to say?
That's where the growth commitments will shift, right? That's where, and a lot of the times too, like the parents will actually ask, "Hey, are you going to talk about this? My son's doing this. Are you going to talk about this?" And I, a lot of the deeper things that the guys might need will come out in the healthy masculinity talks because we talk about judgment, we talk about empathy, we talk about the power of listening, we talk about the power of the pause. Boys react, men respond, right? Like little things like that. And that's where I will have almost like a customer profile of the guy in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I might want to ask him this question because, like, I know he's mentioned he's struggled this before, or hey, we might want to make this growth commitment this week. Like, we had one young man who was struggling with his high school grades because he's getting a little senioritis. He's already committed to a college, and he's kind of like, I don't really want to do this high school thing anymore. And I said, well, what if you just made your weekly growth commitment improving your GPA by like you have to improve your high school GPA every week? And I love that. And so that was like an example, like we tailored the growth commitment
Oh,
to where he was kind of at.
yeah.
So yeah, we adjust to where the guys are at, right? Our goal is to meet them where they are.
I love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
just wanted to bring it up because a lot of programs that I've seen that are similar to what you do, it's so cookie cutter. I personally understand with a psychology degree, don't understand how that's
Yeah.
going to help any one of them because it's so cookie cutter. So that's why I wanted to bring that up so our listeners will know if they reach out to you, you're there to help them and what they're going through. But
Mhm.
since you brought up parents, I'm going to shift a little bit then.
Yeah.
You have told me many times that you sometimes do wind up working with parents in this process. I mean, obviously you're working with the male
Mhm.
person, the son or whatever. You know, you have to remember, I don't believe in surface level action. That's why I keep bringing some of this up, especially being a parent. We
Yeah.
talked about how close I am with my son and my daughter, but I'm even more curious about this piece. So, what role do you see the parents playing, either supporting or even unintentionally limiting these young males' growths?
One of the common lines I get, and it's typically from moms. I mean, I mean, I have the sheet of literally all of the calls that I've been on this last week. It was all 12 moms, no dads. So one of the lines that I get is, I know I created too much comfort for my
Mm,
son. And so the moms the way that I kind of describe it is a lot of these young men, unfortunately, they've grown up with a lack of male leadership in their life or male role models, whether their father maybe passed away when he was younger, maybe there was a divorce and then a stepdad and there were different male figures. And so the moms have really had to step up and be like, I call them these super moms of they're trying to be the masculine energy in the house as well as the feminine energy. And it sounds exhausting. And so I'm very empathetic. I try to empathize with the moms as the best that I can. I'm a 30-year-old guy, so I tell them I will never be a mom. Yet I've talked to enough moms to kind of know the typical challenges and the things that are going on.
Yeah.
And I let them know that you're not alone with this. I don't want you guys to think that you're a bad mom. I don't want you to think that you messed up. Like, I'm assuming you did the best you could with the resources you had and the information you were provided. Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm yet to meet a mom where I'm like, oh, she was a bad mom. She shouldn't have done it. That was horrible. Every mom is very like they're very good humans. Like I feel them at the core. If they weren't, I would probably just say, I don't think this is for
Yeah.
you. It starts with the mom. And so I think one of the things that like I said, like the complacency or the comfort thing is a lot of moms will be like, should I just kick them out of the house? Right. Is that the way to do
Tough
it?
love, right? Let's
Right.
do tough. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The tough love. And I'm like, it's probably not. I mean, I don't know. I don't know your son. I don't know how he would respond to that. Yet what I do know is that if there isn't enough pain, he won't move.
Mm.
So, and one of my favorite metaphors, I just shared this on the podcast a couple of days ago. It really puts this into perspective is there are two dogs sitting on a porch. One of the dogs is whimpering. Guy walks up to the dog and his owner's behind him and says, why is that dog whimpering? And the owner says he's sitting on a nail. And then he says, well, why doesn't he move? And he says he must not be in enough pain.
Yeah.
And so it's a great metaphor about we won't move until we are in enough pain. So unfortunately, these young men, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to young men who are living in their parents' $1 million homes, basements, and they're just kind of working a little bit here and there. There's groceries in the fridge, there's gas in the car.
Yeah.
It's a pretty damn comfortable way to live. It's like how long do you want to live like that? Right? You guys okay with bringing a girlfriend down there? Okay, right? So that's where like I try to create this awareness of they choose the pain. We choose the pain that we want, right? So they could choose the pain of, hey, I'm going to stay complacent in my parents' basement or kind of where I'm at right now and not make progress with my life. But the joy I'm going to receive is everything is kind of given to me. Or I'm going to choose the pain of figuring things out. And the joy I'm going to get is I finally get some independence and make some progress. And so I'm like, you guys choose what you want here. At the end of the day, if you want to choose the pain of figuring your life out, we can support you with that, right? If you want to keep eating Cheetos and binge watching Netflix, you're probably not the right guy for us. And so I think once parents can realize the value of creating a little bit of pain, maybe you make them pay some rent, maybe you make them, do some grocery shopping, right? How can we create a little bit of friction? I think that is the first start to the change. And then I would also, there's 3 different ways that we have a guide that we send to parents. Mentorship is the first way to help your son, hence why we started Be That Guy. Second way is vulnerability, having the parents actually be more vulnerable so that the son can trust them more and essentially listen a little bit better. But the third way, which I think kind of fits in nice here, is environment. Changes environment, right? If you turn all the Wi-Fi off and the electricity off at 7 p.m. at night, I guarantee he's not going to be able to play video games. There's going to be something that happens, right? If you start saying, hey, like you're going to have to pay rent or you can't eat, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. I like all the food that's in the cupboard. That food costs money and there's taxes and just allowing him to see that. So changing the environment here, and yeah, it might create a little temporary friction or temporary resistance. Yet over time, I think if you can have the right conversation with your son saying, listen, we're doing this because eventually one day you might want to have your own life. You might want to
Yeah.
live on your own and buy your own things. And I think once the son starts to think about that, it's like, all right, maybe they're right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that really is a tough one because I think that a lot of parents want to help, right? But a lot of times they just don't know how to.
Yeah.
Like thinking of all the families that you're helping, not just the young men, it's the trickle effect. You're actually helping the parents as well. I mean,
Hmm.
actually, it's kind of funny when you said the moms, what they say to you. I would never have said that about, I'm actually very hard on my son. And, I mean, we do nothing. We even our daughter, like we, I guess, because we were a military family,
Hmm.
we were always very. I mean, I had to be very structured, very stern because I didn't live at home a lot, so I had to, be stern in that way. I don't know that I would have ever said that. So good thing I didn't need to be your client because I would have thrown your numbers off completely.
I mean, there's outliers every
Yeah.
once in a while, right? I will say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. But there are a lot of young people that get comfortable, right?
Mhm.
They get comfortable being in this scenario, living with their parents. Our kids did move in. Each one of them moved in two different times. But after they moved out that second time, we were like, okay, bye. You're
Yeah.
not coming back. We are comfortable being empty nesters. We're not those parents that are going to cry because you're moving. Like, we will
Mhm.
see you at some point. There are other parents that feel, and it's enabling them, enabling that behavior. And I love that you're stepping in there even with the parents to kind of help them grow up and have that trajectory go up and down, not just push them out the door and tell them good luck, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the big piece of it is just having the sons be aware of what they're currently doing,
Yeah.
and really allowing them the opportunity to think if it's helping them, or if
Mm.
it's like really progressing them. And I remember this story just kind of came up. This is kind of like a funny story. So I remember when I was younger, I was probably like 14 years old. We had an attic in our garage, right? So you can
Mm.
like pull it down. It has those stairs that come down. And I remember I walked out and I was like, Dad, could you get the ladder thing? And he goes, Can you not do it? And I said, Well, I don't know. It's a little much. It's like a lot to kind of, it's a lot. And he goes, TJ, I'm curious, if I died tomorrow, what would happen? And it was like, and I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And he goes, and I was like, are you okay? And he goes, it's just a theoretical. I'm just messing with you. I just want to know, if I wasn't here, how would you get that ladder down? And I always remembered that because it was like, well, like at some point I'm gonna have to figure out how to get this ladder down. Using that strategy, and actually I got the ladder down, and then I figured out how to do it, a week later, whatever. Using that strategy with your son, if we didn't provide groceries in the cupboard, what would you do?
What would you do?
And just like let him think about that. And even that, like I can viscerally feel that right now because it's a lot of the way that my father and mother raised me. If we didn't do this, what would you do? And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, like I think it makes you much more grateful for your
Yeah.
parents. Like I
Yeah.
wish more of these guys would just be grateful of the kindness that their parents are providing for them. And two, it makes you think about, geez, what would I do? Like, would I literally be helpless? Like at some point you're gonna figure something out because you're gonna need to make some money, you're gonna need to eat,
Yeah.
assuming you don't just want to go live under a bridge at some point. So I think just having those conversations, and those might be a little hyper rational, a hyper rational approach, yet I do think it's just worth the awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
love you saying all of that because that right there is really what is going to change somebody's life, hearing you say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Hearing you say that also, though, I'm just thinking about a person in my family that I think I'm going to give him this recording actually, make him or make his parents listen to it. Anyway, but because I want people to hear you and listen to what you're saying, if a young man is listening right now, not his parents, like we've
Hmm.
spoken to them, you've spoken about the young man, but let's say a young man is listening right now and he knows he's been inconsistent and feels like he just wishes that he had the right language, the right voice to know someone will simply understand him. Where should he start? Not everything at once, just one step. What is the first thing he should do or should take right now?
Okay, so this is assuming that they're not reaching out to me, hey, like we're talking. This is just
Well,
them,
let's say
them
they
on their
want to
own.
reach out. We're going to put your stuff in the show notes, but
Hmm.
like they're listening to you. And in this 30, 45 minutes, they're like, I want to make a change right this minute. What can that person do?
I would start tracking simple things, and I would probably ask for a little bit more context, like where are you at in life right now, right? Where do you want to get a job? Are you doing
Yeah.
college, trade school? And then basically I would reverse engineer that into daily habits that
Mm.
essentially create a plan to then hit the target. And so my my father taught me when I was younger, he said, what do you want? What's the plan to get it and how are you going to measure it? And so
Mm.
you can use that very simple formula of, hey, what's the thing that I want to do right now? Right? What's the target? And last night actually on one of our calls, I said, it's okay to want things, guys. Like I actually recommend that we want things. If you don't want anything, then what's the point of doing anything? So allowing the guy the opportunity to be like, I want to be healthier, or I want to make some money, or I want to go to move out of my parents. Gotcha. Now, what's the plan that we can do to achieve that? And then what is the daily commitments that we need to follow through on that's going to follow through on that plan and then hopefully hit that target. And so to just get the guy moving in a good direction, I would just do the core habits of reading, exercise, and sleep. I would literally think about what do you have access to from an exercise standpoint, right? Do you go to the gym? If you don't go to the gym, you can do body weight stuff, you can go for walks, you can go for runs. I would start moving every day. Second thing I would do is I would find a book to read and make it a simple book. The book I always recommend is The Compound Effect. That's the book that we start with, written by Darren Hardy. It's easy to read, great impact. It's about doing the little things right. Read for 5 minutes a day for the first week, 10 minutes a day for the next, and then 15, and then just go from there and just read 15 minutes a day. And then I would set a bedtime and a wake time. And if you even want to go a little bit farther, I would also start to limit how much you spend on screens, whether that's video games or whether that's your phone. I would simply just be aware of, hey, I'm going to let, 2 hours a day, right? Just to start. Now think about, is 2 hours a day? I mean, your phone tracks it all for you. I bet you'll hit that before noon pretty quickly, right? So like little things like that, I would set those limits and then track it on the calendar as well. I would do that for 30 days just to see how well you can follow through on those. And to make it even easier, just start with the reading, right? Literally just start with the reading, do it for the first week, then do the exercise for the second, then for the third week, do the sleep, and then for the fourth week, incorporate the phone.
I love that. And I appreciate you diving deep on that because you were first talking, and I was thinking to myself, well, I feel like the thing that they should do is try to think of what they want to change, right?
Yeah.
But then you went down this rabbit hole to help them even further of what should they start doing. Of course, we want them to reach out to you so that way they can be a part of your program and enhance their lives even more. But what I'd really like to do is I'm going to take a second just to circle back to how this relates to leadership because
Yeah.
I am not a leadership coach. I don't want to say I dislike leadership coaches. I think that a lot of times leadership coaches talk too much about the fluff, right? But we
Mhm.
are talking about you guys helping young men be good leaders, good stewards to
Mhm.
themselves and in their own life. So we're not talking surface level, right? We're talking deep understanding and treating humans in good ways, other
Yeah.
people around them and things like that. Because what you're building with these young men, that is leadership really at its most important level. I mean, of course, we would love to know that, they were learning these things as young children, so that way by the time they get to you, they're easy to hit the ground running. But at 18, it's such a
Mhm.
pivotal time. It's such a, they're leaving high school. They're literally becoming an adult. No, so many friends I have, they're like, yeah, when they turn 18, they're moving out. Like they're on their own. They're really not adults, guys. They don't even know how to buy groceries. What are you talking about? But I have friends that do
Mhm.
that. But what you're doing is you're giving them a foundation in this leadership and how to treat themselves, which in turn also teaches them how to treat others, right?
Yeah.
It carries through everything in their life. And I just love that. I'm so glad that you've been on this call. But, really quick, before we wrap up, I would like you to take a moment to speak to the parents.
Mhm.
I want you to speak directly to them now. What would you say to that parent that knows their son needs something, but do not know what to do or how to take that first step? What do you wish that those parents would do? How do you think that they
Mhm.
could be helpful? Just making that one step.
Your son has heard your voice for too long. And I can tell you this from personal experience. I was an 18-year-old young man. And to this day, I have a great relationship with my parents. Yet when I was 18 in those early 20s, I didn't really want to listen to my parents anymore because as young men, as 18-year-olds, I think we're like, I got this, right? We think that we got the world figured out when we really don't. We aren't even close to it. Yet I think we get to this point where we're kind of stepping into our own manhood and the parent's voice unfortunately starts to go a little numb. And so I think what we've built here with Be That Guy is a strategy for parents. I think it's a strategy to help your son get through the numbness of your voice. And I'll tell parents whenever I meet with them, I'm like, I will never be your son's father or mother. And I want you to always remember that, right? You raised him for the first, whatever, 18, 20, however old he is. I said, yet I can ask your son questions that he'll hear differently, especially being a 30-year-old guy who's in good shape and is honest with the guys, right? I said I tell parents, I'm like, the content that we're going to talk about is probably similar to what you guys have shared with him, yet the dynamic is totally different because when he's in a group of 3 to 4 other guys who are tracking reading, exercise, and sleep and setting personal commitments each week, it doesn't, it now pushes away from, hey, here's the thing that mom wanted to do to fix me. And now it shifts to here's what we do and be that guy. Now it becomes the standard. right? When you have guys saying, "Hey, I want my growth commitment this week to be this. I want to track this thing." It's like they have no anxiety in it, right? They have no fear of what
Yeah.
is mom doing this again? They're excited about their life again. That's what parents can expect when they have a son join this. I tell parents, I'm like, listen, I'm not guaranteeing this is going to change your son's life in 12 weeks. I said, but I will guarantee that you'll have 2 to 3 guys checking in on your son every single week and daily, because we have a daily chat, and holding him accountable to making progress with his life. Not only, with his mental progress, his physical progress, but his professional and his personal progress. If he's not doing that right now, I can guarantee you that if he joins this program, that's what we're going to do. And so, think about the progress that he can make, and also think about the pressure that it relieves off of you. Because a lot of the times I'll have parents say, "Hey, can you ask my son about this?" Right? I feel like he's doing this and I don't really know. And so I will weave in different ways to bring it up in a way of, "Hey, just as a human to human concerned about you, how are, like, any interest? Have you guys done this at all?" And the guys will be like, "Yeah, I'm kind of doing that." So, hey, do you guys want to stop it? Right? Let's create a commitment to stop it, right? Or let's create a commitment to start doing this thing. So to the parents, right, your son has heard your voice for too long. I think it's just biology. I don't think it's anything that has to do with you as a parent. And get him a new voice. And it doesn't even have to be that guy in our stuff. Give him like my coach, right? My basketball coach, right? That was the voice that I heard in the time when I really needed somebody. And I have an incredible relationship with my parents, even when I was in that time, right? And so even that didn't work, right? The relationship I had a good conversation with my mom at one point, but it wasn't like, oh, I want to change right after that. When Scott had talked to me, I was like, it doesn't matter if I do the things to him. He's just telling me, why don't you want to work out? You want to do this? You want to do that? There was no like emotional weight to it. There was no emotional history to it. And that's what caused me to be like, huh, he doesn't really have any skin in the game. There's no point in me not doing it. And so that's what I think. That's what a lot of the times when parents, when I get on a call with the moms, like they see it, right? They're very aware of it. They're like, I think he just needs a new voice. And so I wish more moms would be encouraged to reach out, because this stuff is working. Like it's actually helping these guys move in good directions.
Yeah, yeah, this is
Hmm.
such a good talk today, DJ. I really have enjoyed all of this. And I love that you are helping the parents as much as you're helping that son step into this world to
Hmm.
find his own space, really, right? Because health and wellness is so important at all ages. But I want to make sure people know how to find you before we hang
Hmm.
up. Do you have any current like special programs you're offering, or your podcast, or how can they connect with you? I'll make sure that we add the links in the show notes, but
Yeah.
just can you give them some advice right now?
Yeah, so you can go to our website. It's just bethatguy.club.com, because I say it's like we got like a special club that we're making.
Love that.
And then if anybody's on a social media platforms, I'm typically most active on Instagram, so it's just at DJ Logory, Logory. And our YouTube channel has been pretty cool lately, because because YouTube is kind of like for the guys and the parents.
Yeah.
So we post a bunch of stuff each week on content for parents. So I'll do a lot of like mom podcasts almost. And then I'll also do some guy stuff as well. So you can check us out. You can just go to youtube.com, and then the handle is technically at be that guy with 2 eyes, but we can have it linked below just so people can click on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. I think this is such an important conversation.
Hmm.
Being a mom myself, raising my kids, I was in the army and I wasn't always with my children. And I'm just imagining as a parent and all these other moms and even dads that are military parents and don't always have that strong structure they would like. I can just see how this program could be so beneficial even
Hmm.
for them. So I definitely am going to put that in the show notes because this conversation matters, because
Yeah.
leadership is not something you step into later in life. It's built early and built in habits, just like you say, built in structure and consistency. I mean, I talk about those three things all the time as well. And I just love that that's something that's resonating through with this. And without that foundation, people spend years trying to figure that out. Something I will have in my show notes, I'll have the links for my membership groups, because these are 3 different programs, different levels, from business owners, senior managers, and even single parents, different groups for each one of those types of people. But it's a way to get people to have somebody else to listen to them, have somebody else to reach out to, because, sometimes you don't know until you know,
Yeah. Mhm.
And then for people that are listening, if this is a conversation that resonates with you, please pay attention, whether it's for yourself or someone else. This conversation is making me think of several people. So when we get it out there, I'm definitely going to send it to some specific people, because you don't have to figure it out all on your own. We have private conversations all the time with people, one-on-one coaching. We do discreet work, but the podcast is more to reach as many people as we possibly can. If this conversation resonated with anybody, please stay with me, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because leadership is not forged in comfort, it's forged in responsibility. Make sure you take care of your people, take care of yourself. And DJ, thank you so much for being on today. I'm so excited. Is there anything you want to say before we hang up?
I just want to say thank you so much, Traci. Thank you for the opportunity to meet you and to learn about what you're passionate about and to allow me the opportunity to speak to your audience. I hope that it was valuable. I hope that it resonated properly. And thank you. I'm very grateful. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, DJ. I'm sure we'll see you at some point again. I feel like there's got to be another reason to have you on.
Round two coming soon.
Yeah, round two.